Do you have questions?
No, I find that very interesting. That's something I have told many a student, misguided many a student with these. I think I was always a little gun shy about these major third pivots whenever I've messed around with these, and so a lot of time with students will say, no, if it's a major third, just shift. But if you keep the position in the center, like you're talking about, like your traditional first position, it's definitely doable. It's probably even more doable on a smaller bass. But
for sure.
It's definitely, like, I feel comfortable playing this right here.
Yeah.
So,
and when you have certain passages where things are moving and you know, in a lower register, and I think, well, I have a Prokofiev quintet coming up in a few weeks, and there's that last lick and the last movement that's really, you know, 16th notes in the low position. This kind of thing really helps to get that. Mm-hmm. But even anything like, what's another famous one, like the Sturm scene in the Pastoral,
yeah.
You know, pivoting. If you get a handle on these pivots, it helps, I think, to make for a much easier time rather than normally we would expect to shift. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean to throw anything else away. So the other system, the sort of Simandl system, the way that I talk to students about that, for instance, with the Simandl, we're always told to play 2 notes per position, and we kind of creep up, you know, this way. I like to, just for us to have, this comes from Richard Ashley, mm-hmm. right, at Northwestern.
Sure.
Music
and
Cognition
absolutely.
class, right?
Yeah.
So the whole concept of chunking information so that we're more fluid. So what I say, instead of doing 2 notes at a time, I like to explain this fingering system with tetrachords. So I like to think about 4-note groupings. So we think about larger chunks. Mm-hmm. So again, I go to a theory-based kind of idea to get the you know, as Perot would say, the little gray cells working. Mm-hmm. And so I do, in a way, to say, practice your major scales in the old school way, playing 2 notes, shifting, playing 2 notes, just like the progressive scale from Jeff Bradovich. But then to play the scale across the strings this way. So we have, so if, for instance, we take F major, go ahead and play. So we say F, G, and then shift to A, B flat with 2/4. Okay, that's a major tetrachord. Okay, the next tetrachord is going to begin on the 5th scale degree, which is also going to be major. Now, but before you just go and move your hand, the other issue that we have is how far are we going to move our hand and where are we going to, right? So if we've got our 4th finger on, you know, F, G, A, B flat, we've got a 4th finger on B flat. In the old school, our 1st finger is on
A flat on the E string.
And on D flat here, and we want the 5 of F is C, so we want to come back 1/2 step, and then we start again here, another major. 2, 4. So we've had the first tetrachord, 1, 2, 3, 4 is major. The second tetrachord on the 5th scale degree is 5, 6, 7, 8. It's also major. Mm-hmm. The next tetrachord, 5, 6, 7, 8, begins on 2. Mm-hmm. Which will be minor. That's our Dorian tetrachord. And it's the same because we have a whole step here between 1 and 2. The next step is 2. That means we have a 1/2 step back. Mm-hmm. So now we begin on G and play. That's right. And so we play 2, 3, 4, 5. Next we begin on 6, which everybody knows is the relative minor. So it is also a minor tetrachord. Now, notice the pattern. Major, major, minor, minor. Mm-hmm. What do you suppose comes next? Phrygian, Phrygian, okay? Mm-hmm. And then we wind up with augmented. And then the pattern starts again. So the tetrachord on 1 is major. The tetrachord on 5 is major. And they follow it's cyclical. So mm-hmm. 1, 5, 2, 6, 3, 7, 4, and then it starts again, okay? Once you understand this as a grouping of 4, what this enables the student to do is, if they're quick enough to recognize the key of the run in the piece, they see the accidentals, and then they realize what pitch the run starts on in relation to that. If it starts in the third scale degree or something, you can say, oh, it's, you know, a major scale, I start on the third, that means Phrygian, Phrygian, immediately I can say ba 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 ba, and I have 8 notes put together because I've looked at it in terms of groups of 4 instead of always groups of 2. And the analogy, of course, is walking. You know, if it's groups of 2, it's just like whatever note is in front of you, as opposed to at least groups of 4, maybe I see something. You know what I mean? To see ahead. So that's the way I try to introduce the somatal fingering. And then when you have then this concept of the fingering, you know, with 2 notes and shifting, and you couple that with the pivot information that you have, then you can choose the tool that works best for the passage that you're working on, because sometimes you want something more more melodic. You want to keep the sound the same. You want to play on one string. So maybe using more shifts and using more of the somatal fingering, for instance, is the choice that you would make. But if you have something very, very fast and quick, maybe you want to try and do it with a pivot fingering that will help you to play more notes with less effort. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's a great, that's a very elegant way to look at the somatal fingering, grouping into 4, because I think people really get caught in that, you know, you look through the early parts of the somatal book and it's that like, it's very positional, you know, in each position. I think people, so just thinking of the tetrachord, that helps you to just navigate the bass so much better.
I think so. I mean, there is something to that with this, but the problem with playing that way is, you know, when you think about it, one way to think about it is, for instance, the tetrachord way is theoretical based. We're talking about creating a fingering that reflects the theory of, is this a major, in a major key and a minor key, and what are the fingerings related to that, as opposed to the pivot, which is bass oriented. We're talking about where we are in the landscape of the instrument. So I think with those two things working together, you cover an awful lot of territory. The playing across the bass with the somatal is also valuable, but for me, if I'm going to think now about playing across the instrument, why limit myself to this when I can leave my thumb in the one position and catch that much more information? You know, it just seems to make sense that way.
It makes perfect sense, and that, I think that the problem with the somatal figurings is it becomes something that's it's very much what you do in bass, you know, like 2, 5, 1, 2, 5, 1, but it's not linear if you limit yourself to that. But just by adding that pivot, all of a sudden you're playing a complete range, you know, with the scale, and I think that's a very practical way to look at the bass.
If we were to look at a piece of standard repertoire and maybe choose something that people would be familiar with, and then take a look at it from these 2 different perspectives and see how we might choose. And again, it's up to the choice. It's up to you. You're the mix master. You're the chef. You have to decide how you want to put these elements together.